And say hello, everybody, to Stig, who is Carlene's beautiful dog. Oh, hello, Stig. Oh, what kind of dog? Bit camera shy.
Yeah, he's a Boston Terrier.
Oh,
So, yeah. So and he's called Stig because I have a sidecar motorbike and he rides in it with me. And it's from Stig from Top Gear. So I've got 3 of those.
But you said 5 dogs altogether, right?
Yes.
So that is a lot of dogs.
Yes.
I am going to very quickly do a little intro for Carlene and then ask her to tell her anything that I've missed. And then we're going to look at some of her work and we're going to talk about her development as an artist. So Carlene actually studied fine arts many, many moons ago. And at the time she majored in printmaking and ceramics. But she left the art world for farming, and she actually runs, and she's going to talk more about this to us, she runs a horse-facilitated learning program called Horseplay on the farm that she owns. And she was very focused on that for quite a few years and doing some crafting, but not really having much to do with art, despite having had that degree. But after being diagnosed with brain cancer, she wanted to explore art again as a way of connecting with herself. And that's when we met, when she took my course. And the work that she's done since then is beautiful and stunning. So that's a very brief story. Tell us a little bit more, Carlene, kind of about the horseplay business and the farm, and then about how you came back to your art.
Okay, so I always wanted to live on a farm, always wanted to own horses, and for most of my life couldn't do it. And when I was 32, I convinced my husband to live on a farm, and I bought my first horse. And it didn't go well, because when you work with a horse and you think like a human, you're on a different page to your horse. So it almost links, when I was thinking about it today, links in with the art thing. Because if you approach it thinking in a certain way, you're never, ever going to break through those barriers that you set. So my horse just took one look at me and went, thank you, but no thank you, no relationship needed here. Ran away with me, backed me off. And so my dream of riding across the hay fields with my long hair flowing kind of ended up me being scrunched on the ground with bloody noses and stuff like that. And a friend of mine said to me, you know, some people go, oh, buy a bigger boat, take your horse to this trainer, do this. And a friend of mine said to me, nope, it's all about you. And if you want to fix your horse, you better fix yourself first. So if you want a calm, quiet horse, you've got to be a calm, quiet person. And so my journey into natural horsemanship started that way. And it's basically, if you have a partner who's an equine and you can find out what motivates him to get through a day safely, then he will see you in a different light. So it's about seeing life from a different perspective while acknowledging that you have a partner who sees something completely different. So horses' eyes on the side of their heads, they see things in 360 degrees. They've got peripheral vision. They pay attention to the entire environment. We've got eyes in the front of our heads. We look in a linear way, and then we tend to think in a linear way. So it's quite interesting in that your Find Your Joy courses started to make me see art in a peripheral, all-encompassing way, that I couldn't just go, oh, I'm going to do a painting, or I'm going to paint a pear or a horse. I had to go and say, what does that mean? Why should I do it? Why should I waste my time painting something if it means nothing? And it's the impact of the horsemanship was huge. And then in doing it, I would be playing on a Saturday afternoon with my horse, and I had a shop on my farm where I sold my crafts. And people would hang over the fence and watch me doing stuff with my horse and go, how the hell did you get your horse to do that? And I go, join in and I'll show you. It's about personal development, whether you're a leader in a corporate team or you're a mother running a family, you're still people. And so the horses, when you walk into the ring with the horses, they don't care if you're the MD of a company, a stay-at-home mum homeschooling your kids, or the janitor in a business. They see you for who you are, and they have mirror neurons in them that they can see right through the facades that we put up to try and cope with living in life. So your horse sees you for who you are, and it's a totally non-judgmental space. He walks in, he doesn't go, oh my God, here comes Carl. He just goes, here's Carl. Ooh, interesting how she's showing up today. And then he expects me to be the best that I can be. And
Right.
so I'm bringing team leaders into the field, and they've got to learn how to deal with, like most of us on the art courses, I think, are over 50 on average here. So we're kind of that baby boomer crowd. And the people who are now walking into the workplaces are millennials, and they are a seriously different creature. And if your baby boomer managers don't pay attention, they're going to lose their team. On the personal development side, but it links back into leadership side. So,
that's a very rewarding thing to be doing.
yeah.
And then you say in your bio that it was cancer that brought you back to art. What was it that you felt was missing?
Okay, so in 2014, one of my very, very best long-term friends, a girl called Andre, died of breast cancer. And we had met when we were 15. And I went to varsity and studied printmaking in the fine arts way. And she went to a technical college and learned graphic design. But the whole way through our lives, we crossed paths and we kind of ran this like parallel existence. And due to her life circumstances, she had to make art to sell, to make a living. And when she died at 49, and I'm only 2 months older, younger than her, I was so angry because everybody was like, oh, you know, it was Andre's time and that. And I was like, no, because she never ever painted for Andre. She only ever painted to pay the bills. And she was supremely talented. And I just went, well, I think her death was an utter waste, and I don't agree with all the life lessons that come out of it. And I went, well, I am not going to waste Andre's death. I'm going to go and say that one day if I die, or when we all die, there will be no regrets. And because I'd given up my art to go and do something very physical, doing the farming and the horses and stuff like that, I kind of had just put that aside. And when she died, I went, I wonder what my art would have been if I hadn't done what I'd done, if I'd carried on being an artist. And then the irony was that 5 months later, I was diagnosed with brain cancer and given 18 months to live. And so I spent 18 months fighting the system and finding alternative ways to cure myself. And so far, touch wood, and I've got a dormant tumor and I'm not dead 5 years later. And on the day that I was told, your tumor's acting like it's dead, it's not dead, but it's acting like it's dead, your free taster course thing came across my news feed. I'm going to sign up and I'm going to do this, and I'm going to do it for me, and I'm going to do it to honor Andre as well, that I'm going to do the art that she didn't get to do.
I always ask people to send me what they were doing before you began to paint seriously. And so you were, the original photo you sent me, I've cropped it, but you actually had the vegetables out, and you were, and it looks like you've got pencils. So tell me about this.
You know, there's these things where you do a 100-day challenge. You draw something for 100 days. And, oh God, I can't do 100 days. Okay, I'll settle for 30 days. And so what I did was, we call these millies. I think you guys call them sweet corn. And the nice thing is you buy them when they're green, and then they change as they dry out, and they're still very interesting shapes. So for 30 days, I committed to drawing these things. And the first ones were horrendous. I think this was like day 16 or 17. And so every day I would show up and I would draw them, and then I tried different medium. By day 18, I was like, I am so sick to death of drawing these. I'm going to go play with my horses. And that was the end of it. This is a coleograph where you make a collage on a plate, and then you paint it with white paint, and then you seal it with varnish, and then you ink it up like an etching plate. So you put ink on, and then you wipe it off with the back of your hand, and then you put that through a press on wet paper, and you get that.
One of the first things you did, I think, in Find Your Joy.
Yeah. So this was the one where you said steal like an artist. And I actually stole from John Washam, who does human faces, and he had like this side portrait with an eye. And so I thought, well, okay, I'll use that and I'll do a self-portrait. Oh, and it was just horrific. It was really bad. And then I went, wonder if I could draw horses. I'd never drawn a horse. And people had often said to me, you should really draw horses, but they're the hardest things to draw. So then I thought, well, the eye is pretty easy to draw. So I started doing that. But this one has got about 5 or 6 versions of it underneath. And then finally, it just clicked. This was the start of the new journey.
I remember seeing this in the group at the time thinking, oh, wow, because, you know, you're about to go on a journey now and I love that it was the horses again that led you back into, they led you to finding your own voice. Now, you labeled this one when you sent it to me, something like the first time my style began to emerge.
Yeah.
What did you see in here that you felt was your style?
So this is my favorite mare, Jenny, Jamaica. And so there's a very emotional connection to it. And I remember doing this. I started it at about 8:30 one night. And by 9:30, 10 o'clock, it was finished. Just fell into place. Everything was just there. And that I could now start bringing my fine lines into it, because I really love working with the pen and ink, because I spend most of my time with people in the field with my horses, and what I get to see is people often not wanting to necessarily change, or not being brave enough to change, or not knowing how to change. And when we do equine psychotherapy sessions with the horses, the people go into the field where the horses live, and my horses live in 10-15 hectares, so they don't have to join into a session if they don't want to, but horses show up. It's quite magical. And you'll have these very sad people who have maybe come through a program to us, and they try to hide from the facilitators what they're feeling or whatever, and a horse will just come slowly into their space and see them for exactly what they are and where they are, and have no judgment about it. And so that's what this painting is about. And the things we see in the field are very subtle. You know, there's not huge drama. It's just quietly things happen, and they're often quite private, where as facilitators we don't necessarily have access to what that person's feeling, or that they can share it with us if they choose to, but they don't always. And so it's really between them and the horse, and what they take home with them is private.
I thought we would look at these because in the middle of the Find Your Joy course, you branched out into fruit.
Yeah.
And I love these.
Thank you. It was where I was like, oh, I just don't know what next to draw. And I went to the supermarket, and pears are always gorgeous because they're all gnarly and interesting shapes and stuff like that. And I actually did a whole series through the lockdown. You remember when most people just couldn't get excited? You had all this time on your hand to draw and paint, and then everyone was just stuck. And so I called it pear-shaped, where my life is pear-shaped. And so I just did loads and loads of pears until a bunch of them got stolen from a monkey that sneaked through my window. I love abstract, but I see those marks and things that people do. And so this one, I went, how many marks can I put into a representational painting? So I had an absolute party with these series.
Let's move on to more current work. So tell us, first of all, why trees?
I wanted to do the course again because I felt I needed the supervision and the pushing that Louise gives. But if I carried on with my horse stuff, I would be too much in a comfort zone. So I thought, okay, so things in my life are horses, Boston Terrier dogs, like the one that's sitting on my lap, and trees, because I live in a place with magnificent trees. And so that's where I started. So one afternoon when I was walking, because every afternoon I go and I check on the horses and that, and then I take my dogs for a long walk. And we've got these really interesting indigenous trees on the farm called Hilaria trees. And where these particular ones grew was on a stone wall. And so they were compromised. So they were really weird, gnarly kind of trees. And then the fire breaks had gone through and scorched them slightly. So that's what I used. And I kind of just went, okay, everybody's playing with collage. Freaking collage just keeps coming out. I don't like collage. And okay, I'm going to do collage, but I'm going to do it my way. So what I did was I did a monoprint. And then what I did was just randomly tear up the papers, stick them on, and go, okay, let's start drawing. And I just doodled, and just using the Hilaria trees.
So exciting.
And it started like that. Yeah.
That's a close-up of one of those so that you can see what it looks like.
And it was just lovely. I had no major plan other than let's see if I can bring tree shapes into it and take it from there.
You said you hate collage, but then you mentioned these are collaged. So
yeah, because I just thought I got to find out why are people so excited about this stupid collage? Because just to me it just never appealed, but I really like this. And so then I went on holiday years ago with another art tribe member, Nelda, and she has this magnificent old olive grove just behind her property, and we'd spend hours taking photos there. So I used the shape of those stunted olive trees that are 1,200 years old. So I collaged the stems, so to speak, and then just then played. But this one, I decided I wanted to add, so I did the background first and then stuck the collage on top and then just doodled into that.
I didn't know there were trees that were 1,200 years old.
Oh, it's absolutely amazing. There's you climb over the hill and then there's just this weird landscape filled with these trees, and the stems get massively truncated and big, but then the leaves are just like little frothy things on top.
What's fantastic is, even though, like a lot of people watching this, I don't have any frame of reference to know what these kind of trees are other than your description. So when I first saw them, I don't know, they're old olive trees, but they have such emotional feeling to them. These paintings, I would like to own one of these paintings, and I don't even know these trees because you have because you have the feeling about them. That's what's coming through in these pieces, and that's what's fantastic about art. I think it doesn't matter what we're portraying. It doesn't matter if other people don't even have that same connection to it. If we have the connection to it, we convey that to other people. And these are so cool.
Then the next assignment we had to do was still like an artist, and because I've done the course twice now, I think when you first do it, you're very literal. Like last year, it was taken a portrait with a focus on an eye. But this year, I realized what you were asking was, when you look at other people's art, what resonates within it with you. It's not about the shape that you can copy or the colors and that. It's like, what are the ideas that are connecting to neurons within your brain that go, oh my word. And so the person that I was quite inspired by and was a lady called Belinda Fox, and her art doesn't look anything like this. But what she does is she does these huge abstract-y type, also once again doodling. And if you read her bio, the basic shapes are based on a gladiola flower, which if you looked at it, you'd never think of gladiola until she tells you that that's the shape that she started, and then she fills them in. And I'm talking about each petal is probably 2 hand sizes. And then she sits with pen and inks and little watercolors, and she paints these tiny details. And it gave me permission, because I sometimes, when I'm part of a group that's filled with lots of abstract art, you kind of go, oh, am I getting too uptight? You know, everybody else is getting big and free, and there I'm going smaller and smaller and smaller, and, you know, using a 1 mil pen and ink in my paint brushes. The only one I've got big like yours, Louise, is for doing gesso. and so it was like, here's an artist who is so well known, and she's earned major awards, and she's done residencies in Amsterdam and everything. And she's been creatively successful because she follows her heart, which is to do things that are minute and delicate and tiny.
Yeah. Da-dun, the horses are back, the trees are here.
Can't keep a good horse away, hey?
So tell us about, what are you calling this series?
Can't see the wood for the trees.
That's a great title. I like your titles. Yeah. Pear-shaped was good too.
So this one I did and that day I didn't have any plan to put the horse in. I just thought, I'm going to do, in this one I'm just going to do trees. And I thought, every time I go for a walk on my farm road, one of my favorite places on the farm, and these are all gum trees, or eucalyptus trees. And interesting enough, they're aliens in our country, so all the Australians just love their gum trees. And in South Africa, we're told to chop them down or or grow them in commercial forests, but I've got a glade of them that I absolutely love, and they're all grays and they're just beautiful. And as the road curves, often my horses, because the trees are in their paddocks, the horses are standing between the trees with the sun coming through them. And so this one is my oldest mare, Holly, is a very quiet, subdued loner of a horse. And it's not usual that a horse is a loner. And so I used her to be in the background, and she's translucent because she's sort of there as part of the landscape, but she's also her own entity.
This is the last one that we have to look at. I absolutely love this. You said you had some slight reservations about it. I love it because it feels to me like we've come full circle, but we've jumped ahead. So we've come full circle back to the horse's eyes, and that fascination you have with their gentle, all-knowing personalities. And you've combined the trees, and the trees are going increasingly abstract in this one.
I knew that I wanted to have a horse's face in it. So I put the collaged bits as if there was a bit of a mane. So on the left top corner, the mane, and it comes round, and it's got the hard edge of the nose with the horse in that. And then I painted into it. Oh, and it was just terrible. It just wasn't working. It was like I was getting too thinky. And so I took a sponge and I just rubbed all the paint off, and then went back again and went, okay, let's just go and not worry whether it looks like a horse or not. Just follow the lines. So like you can see at the bottom, the collage lines I've used them. So is it tree roots, or is it lines on a horse's face? And I just went, doesn't matter. And I just followed it. And so out came this very interesting, quite abstract. And the only reason that I don't utterly love it, I do like it, is that sometimes it reminds me of the veterinary school's cadaver things of horses. So in my past life, I was a graphic artist. And one of my jobs was I worked at the biggest medical school in South Africa in their graphics department. And I would be given cadavers and slices and all sorts of things that I had to draw for the professors. So I kind of, every time I look at this thing, I go, it's just a tiny bit of that skinned horse look about it, but I don't know. So
I kind of see what you mean, but I would never have thought it unless you'd said it. But I kind of see what you mean. But it's very intriguing because it's so different. And this is what I love about your art. It's all so you. What I love about these are they're all so cohesive. They're all clearly by the same person. And yet they're all, they're just all so different and interesting. And I really find it hard to believe that was your first real painting.
Yeah.
Ruby says that your paintings make the ideal case for working in a limited palette and how much can be done with it. It is so true. And also the perfect example of painting what you love, because everything you've done is what you are connected with, thinking about what you love and investigating. Did you find that easy to connect with that? Because you seem you didn't.
I'm one of those people, I can go do lots of stuff out in the field with my horses, but to sit and write about it, that's hence I don't have a website. And then I see some people go, oh, journaling, such a mission. It's not about having to pour your heart out. It's about just jotting things down that you come back to. And I've got 2 journals now, but last year's one and this year's one. And I'm astounded when I go through last year's one. And the first thing you said was go find artists that work catches your eye. And when I look at it now, I went, what was I thinking? They're so boring. But if I didn't do that journal, I wouldn't have a record of how far I've come. And now what I do is I just print out the photographs of the art that appeals to me, and I put in, and I just do point form so that it's there and I can see the value in it. And if you don't keep a journal, you're robbing yourself of going back and seeing how far you came from. And on the days where you think, oh, I'm useless, I'm stuck, I'm whatever, go see where you came from. You'd be amazed. Yeah.
Oh, the dog is just melting.
He just says, this is so nice. Carl doesn't usually let me sit for an hour on her lap. But I'm sorry about the snoring, and you just should be grateful there's no smell on Zoom.
Yeah, we don't have to worry about that.
It's probably a year or 2 years on since that conversation.
That was actually 2019, I think, 4 years ago. See, we're all getting old.
Yeah, we can gauge our age by all the video content that we make. You've been following different routes. You've worked with different materials. You've worked with oils. You've returned back to your printmaking. And there's a lot of that element coming back in. What has been exciting you, and what have you been working with lately that you're really excited to share with us?
Well, I actually got into some jelly plate printing because my usual stuff wasn't working. And I hate doing still lives. I would love to do flowers. I'm an absolute fan of a South African lady called Kim Black. Her paintings are magnificent, but I can't do that. I don't have the space to do big paintings. Two, I don't have the head space for big paintings. And the horse paintings weren't going so well. They felt like on repeat. And yet the horses are probably one of the biggest parts of my daily life. So it stands to reason that I should do them, but it just didn't feel right. So I thought, well, let's dive into the hub and find something to do. And I went, ooh, jelly plate. And it just sent me down a rabbit hole, a very delicious rabbit hole. And then so I ended up with lots and lots of papers with some really interesting abstract backgrounds, all based on the foliage that I pick up on my way walking on my farm. And then it was like, so what do I do with it? And then because I'm not a good abstract artist, I love nitty-gritties. I love little things. So I started to do realistic paintings onto the jelly plates of some of the flowers that I picked up along the way on my walks. And so I just called it botanicals. And I really had a lot of fun because I didn't have to think too much, because I could just bring in, I think one of my best skills is drawing. So I just started to do these very intricate sort of drawings in paint. And it just led me down a rabbit hole. And then somebody gifted me a whole lot of dahlias. And so I just squished them when they were a bit old onto the jelly plates. And they came out, every tiny little detail came out. And then I was like, so how do I paint these? And then I just thought, well, I'm just going to play with positive and negative shapes. So I brought in colors in some places and left color off in others. And they're really weird and wild, but I actually just love them. And I've got some issues with my brain. I'm a bit wobbly at the moment, and I can't figure out why, because my tumor's not doing anything, but they've discovered the radiation's doing damage. And it's actually slowly but surely eating into my left side's motor skills. So half of my brain is really stressed, excuse the pun, about what's going on in my head. And so to be totally creative, bringing it from nothing, is just really, really hard for me. So it's almost like this kind of jelly plate painting and coloring in and doing stuff. I don't have to dig too deep, and it's giving me an incredible space of I'm doing something creatively every day, but I don't have to tax myself to do it.
What is it that you want to capture with the horses, and how do you use that in your art?
The horse paintings they come from the heart. It's been a journey that I'm not so sure how much longer I can do them. And I know we're not supposed to compare ourselves, but I belong to an equine art group. I look at my art and my horses are always slightly out of proportion, and yet I have these magnificent horses that I own that are definitely not out of proportion. And no matter how hard I try, it's just like weird looking horses come out of my space and that. And I'm starting to sometimes think, like, how much is it a lack of being able to draw properly? Horses, to draw them really well, is getting in the way of me taking my art somewhere further with the horses. Am I stuck in a rut that I'm just repeating the same old, because I don't do full horses, I only do their heads, partly because can't draw the rest of horses because I haven't put the hours in that I see with this other art group. You can check those people have done hundreds of hours, and then I go, yeah, but do I really want to do that? And so I'm sitting at the moment in a cusp, because I don't quite know where my art is going.
I want to go back to something you said. Have I found my style yet? Nope. And I hope to never find myself static in one place in this journey through life and art.
Yeah. Last year, I had surgery in July, and then I started doing the Find Your Joy course, and Louise had challenged us to work on a series. And so I did the usual taped exercise with 6 blocks. And I was trying to paint loosely. So I was painting with a very paintbrush, people and their horses, like close together, face of a horse and a face of a person. And I just can't do that super loose stuff. And all of them were terrible. So I tore them all up into squares. And then I started collaging them all together. And it kind of fitted with my whole brain was a bit fragmented at that stage, because when you have brain surgery, your synapses and all those neural pathways are disrupted. So you have like a month where everything's just like bits. And you just got to chill and go with the flow. So I thought, well, I'll just chill and go with the flow with my taped exercises. And I came up with these 6 really different. I mean, you know, if you look at my botanicals and my beautiful horses, and then there's these bizarre, bright colored collage type things. And I thought, I bet you this gallery is enough thinking out of the box that it might just go. So and you had to send 2 in as a series. So I chose 2. And they were accepted straight away. And they were actually some of the first art to sell on the exhibition. And then they asked me to send the others down, which I have. And once the exhibition ended, they said, please, could I leave them there? So it was such a uplifting thing, because if you had to say to me, which art am I most proud of and that I want to go, this is mine. Like if I only had one chance to go put it out there in the public, those would probably have been the last. In fact, they weren't mounted, they weren't framed, they were at the bottom of my drawer. But something said to me, these people were looking for South African stories. And here I am, a white woman who lives up on a hill, whose life's a bit fragmented. I'm into horses. And I look at in South Africa, it's a really tough country to live in at the moment, as you know, Trace. And it's like every time you put yourself out there, you've got to go, which part of South African society am I putting myself into? And then you have to become this kind of person. So if you're the farmer at a regenerative farming meeting, you become this kind of person. If you go to town and you're a white woman in a bad area, you're going to have to become a brave stand up. I'm not scared of being mugged. And that's the realities. If I'm the employer, because I employ 12 people and I've got to be, they call me the mama. I'm the mama. And I kind of always go, no, I've only got 2 children and you 12 are not part of it. But I've got to be the mama figure. And then I've got to be the wife figure. And I've got to be the artist figure. And I've got to be the horseplay facilitated figure. So geez, and every South African has exactly the same story, just in different contexts.
I forget how exhausting it is.
Yeah, and so you just always have to have these different faces, but yet through all of this, my horses are this calm, consistent quality. They live on the hill. Horses have one life, and they live it exceptionally well if they're given the chance. And so no matter how pulled I feel in different ways that society asks me to be, and I'm always true to myself in those spaces, but I allow this group to see this much, and I allow this group to see that much, and not everybody sees the total. But my horses, they live a total life. They are who they are. If the situation scares them, they show you and they run away. Whereas when we're scared, we have to just put on a brave face and just keep going. Yeah. So that's what those pictures were about. And I'm actually, in retrospect, I'm really proud of them. And then they said to me, this art is so authentic. And I remember Louise always saying, if you create art with authenticity, people will see it.
When you actually took that piece and started ripping it up and tearing it and laying it down, because I know you don't like collage. You've got a thing with collage.
And it's so quick to fall into the trap of, well, if I made some more like that, maybe they could sell. And there's just everything in me goes, nope, that was a season. And that's it, you know. You think that you had 3 different people in your 3 different stages. I feel like a schizophrenic 3/4 of the time when I look at my art, because it goes, like you say, the sort of the cartoonish horses, because I was going down a gouache and watercolor direction. And then when I did the oils, I did those huge big roses, which are so not me. But that was what the teacher was teaching, and I wanted to learn the skills. And by the way, I love oils and I hate them. That drying time is just so annoying. Somewhere the exploring is lovely, but I'm sometimes losing the play in the exploring, and that's starting to frustrate me. When I look back on my art, I think, sure, the art I made in 2019 and 2020 was so much better than what I'm doing now. And I think it's because I've lost the play and I've got too serious about trying to achieve. And it's not achieve as in sell, not achieve as in do shows, but I just feel like I'm running out of time and I need to get somewhere. But if you had to ask me where, I don't know. I just want to do gobsmacking art that I even gobsmack myself.
In June 2025, Carl completed some incredibly gobsmacking art that she felt was worthy of a massive mountboard and frame. It was just 3 days before she passed. We are so blessed to have had your friendship, your creativity, and your enduring spirit in our lives.